It's so hard to make that actually happen that most people never do the first step, which is trying.
When you're trying to become successful, failure should be your greatest motivator and your greatest teacher. Yes, failing sucks and it hurts and nobody likes it, but that's why when you get up from that failure and you decide to push forward and shake off all the dirt that you just laid in because you fell to the bottom of the barrel, that's when you truly understand what it means to become successful. Just never giving up, because all it takes is that one extra time of you giving up is when you become successful. It's recovering from that failure one more time, and that's when you will be successful.
Everybody knows that things should be better. Everybody's got ideas of how to make things better. I mean, ideas are very easy. They're a commodity.
All it takes is one time to get up. You can get down 40 times, but that 41st time when you decide to put those britches on and get up and attack this next challenge, that can be when you become successful. But if you decide to lay there and wallow in your own self-pity, you'll never become successful. You need to have that mindset of constantly wanting to win. You don't want to be a sideline cheerleader. You want to be an aggressive go-getter. You want to be a lion in a field amongst dogs. You want to just be crazy courageous, and you want to be super aggressive, and you want to be known as the guy who wants to win. You don't want to settle for second place or second best. You want to always strive to be the greatest that you can be each and every single day you wake up. You want to know you're going to do whatever it takes to be the best.
Why do we have to paint everybody as being on one side or the other? Most people are right down the middle, right? Most people are reasonable.
Be different this way, and I see the world differently. I want it to get to this way. I want things to function the way I think they should. It's so hard to make that actually happen that most people never do the first step, which is trying, and that's 99% and 1%. Like, everybody knows that things should be better. Everybody's got ideas of how to make things better. I mean, ideas are very easy. They're a commodity. There's really not much value in ideas. Really, the person who says, I'm going to take that idea and really try to make it actually manifest itself into a product or service that people can consume and engage with and fall in love with, that's entrepreneurship. That's the difference.
The expectation from where I came from, and listen, I didn't come from like the slums in Bangladesh or something, so I don't want to overemphasize it, but the expectation was I would be a cop. So I took the policeman's test and when I was 17 or 18 years old with my little brother Josh, and he wound up going into the police and I wound up going to Fordham. But at the time, my dad had his restaurant repossessed by the federal agents for not paying his taxes. So they came with shotguns that summer in 1988 and they closed his place down, and that was the most traumatic moment of my life.
I will say that there are 3 or 4 angel investors who did really well. Bill Lee, Chris Sacca, Ron Conway ahead of me, but they don't angel invest anymore. Some of those have retired. I think Ron Conway and Sacca are no longer investing. And then Bill Lee has Craft Ventures, and Mark Andreessen has, Andreessen Horowitz doesn't. So those two don't angel invest. They put in $3, $4, $5 million. So it's sort of like being Kevin Durant. When LeBron James leaves the game, he'll be number 1 by default. And anger, self-loathing, do you have in your soul that you're going to stop people from having a barbecue? You're just sad that nobody invited you to a barbecue. That's what when I look at those peppermint patties, permit patty people, I'm just like, oh, don't you get it? They're not experiencing love in their life. It's people who are different, celebrating and being Americans together. I think actually that's going to be the end game. I think we're going to get out of this Trump era, this Russian collusion, all this madness. And at some point, people are just going to be like, you know what? Fighting over guns and abortion and all this stuff is just exhausting. And they just delete Twitter, or they delete the social media stuff, Facebook, and they just go have, in my ideal world, a picnic.
Got a lot of the things that I think entrepreneurship is about. Poker, trying to figure out a situation with limited information. And then there's also intimidation, deception, strategy. All these things come into play, all with limited information. It's like playing chess without knowing what pieces you have or where all the pieces on the board are. So I feel like I've learned a lot, and it's actually a very good use of time, but I don't think it's a good use of time when it starts to take over your life. And I think that's one of the key things I learned in the sort of later half of your life. I'm 42 now, so in the second half of my life so far, has been a lot about like sort of learning who I am. I have a compulsive personality, compulsive gambler in another life, learning martial arts at a young age and maybe having a lot more self-awareness over time. But knowing you have an addictive, risk-taking personality, if you can focus that and not be self-destructive and understand like, oh, this is where, taking risk becomes self-destructive and this is where taking risk is actually virtuous. I think that's a big part of entrepreneurship and the best entrepreneurs.
And I wanted to be powerful and rich when I was a kid. Looking back on it, the reason I wanted to be powerful and rich was because I was poor and I had no power. It was very complicated for me. And then the money transferred, and my wife remembers the story, and I remember the story like it was yesterday. I was sitting there refreshing my Bank of America account, the corporate account, and nothing. And then boom, 27 million bucks. And I start crying. I don't have to worry about money ever again. Scary for me to be poor for so long that I just had this incredible cathartic release. And then I went to Silicon Valley, and when I started making noise up there, all these obnoxious rich people were like, I'm not in it for the money. You know, I do venture capital because I'm passionate about changing the world. I was like, you have all the money. That's why you're saying it's not about the money. If it wasn't about the money, why are you raising these huge funds and taking these huge management fees? And like, it's obviously this is all about the money.
Sure.
So it's not the be all end all, but I had a very complicated relationship where, and you know, when you make your first 10 million, it takes the edge off. Of course, I know it's obnoxious to say, but I can say without being obnoxious, I hope, because I spent the majority of my life broke.